Welcome to the Capital Forum interview series. My name is Karina Lubell, and today I'm speaking with Barry Nigro, partner and chairman of the Antitrust Department at Fried Frank. In addition to an accomplished career in private practice, Barry was also deputy director of the FTC's Bureau of Competition from 2003 to 2006. Barry, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Karina.
So our topic this morning is the FTC review process. And Barry, perhaps you could begin by explaining a little bit about the role of the bureau director in the merger review process, and maybe give an example of a merger investigation.
Sure. So the bureau director, I like to think of the bureau director as sort of the if you think of the competition bureau as a team, the bureau director is the coach and the leader at the same time. And then I think of the commissioners as the owners.
That's a nice analogy.
And so if you think about the merger process, it starts before you file the Hart-Scott. So hopefully, if it's a transaction that involves any issues, the client's focused on that, the outside lawyers are focused on that, and there's some thought put into how to address the regulatory process. Once the HSR is filed, it goes through an initial review by the pre-merger office, and then is given to the appropriate staff in the FTC, whether it's mergers 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Occasionally, a merger matter will end up with the healthcare shop. That's happened in the past, especially when mergers 1 has been very busy. So you've seen matters that have been handled there on occasion. And what happens after that kind of depends on how interested the agency is in looking at the transaction and whether it raises any significant competition issues.
Okay, and so at that initial stage, it sounds like it's still very much with the staff of the merger shop, and that it has. At what point does a transaction sort of come across the radar of the bureau director?
So the bureau director is made aware of those matters where it's possible the staff may be seeking a second request. The FTC and the Department of Justice both get a lot of HSR filings, and so Debbie Feinstein, for example, is not looking at every filing. But once the initial screen occurs with the staff in one of the merger shops, if the transaction looks like it may raise some issues that require further thought, then either Debbie or one of the deputies in the front office or one of the attorney advisors will be made aware of it, and there may be some conversations depending on the level of interest. And at that point, the front office very much needs to be involved, because a decision will need to be made if the staff is recommending a second request, whether to issue a second request.
Oh, okay. So the involvement of the front office could actually come during that first 30-day HSR waiting period.
It can, and on deals that are raise obvious issues, it happens pretty quickly.
Okay. And we've been talking about the bureau director. I assume that the deputy bureau director also plays some role in the coordination with the staff.
Sure. So historically, there have been 2 deputy directors, and they've tended to share responsibility for the divisions within the Competition Bureau. Currently, there's one bureau director, Steve Weissman. And so he would be involved in all the matters. Right now, because of the Cisco U.S. Foods litigation, which he's leading, he may not be involved as he typically would, and so Debbie would probably be more involved than she might in a typical situation where there isn't a pending litigation that the deputy bureau director is leading.
Okay. And so it sounds like, though, that there isn't so much a fixed structure in terms of the level of involvement, because, as you mentioned, with Cisco going on, roles may have changed somewhat. But maybe you could speak to the issue of the relationship, of sort of the flexibility within the relationship between the front office and the staff.
Yeah, so the process is fluid, and there is a lot of flexibility. The only constraint really is the 24 hours in the day. I mean, it really is a question of what else is going on in the Bureau and a matter of priorities. So the director of the Bureau of Competition can be as involved or uninvolved as she or he wants to be. In my experience, the directors have been very engaged, all in different ways. The deputy directors have been very engaged as well. They tend to spend more time with the staff than the director because they have more time. The bureau director not only has to manage or be the coach of the team, but also has to spend a lot of time with the commissioners, the owners, so to speak. And so their time, her time, Debbie, in this case Debbie Feinstein, her time is going to be much more limited because she's not only keeping herself apprised of what's happening in the Bureau and helping to manage that process along with the staff, but staying in close communication with the commissioners so that they're aware of what's in the pipeline and which matters may require significant attention on their part.
I see. And so what, and it sounds like the bureau director, in this case, Debbie Feinstein, may get involved fairly early in the process, even before a second request is issued. At what point would she begin liaising with the commissioners to give them a heads up that there may be some issues coming forward?
So the commissioners first become aware of a matter when they're required to act on it. So if a second request is going to be issued or compulsory process is going to be sought, then at that point the commissioners and the chair in particular will become aware that there's a matter that requires their attention and a decision. Obviously the commissioners are not apprised of every HSR that comes through the system. So on those matters where there's going to be a second request, they'll be aware of that. And then at that point, the focus shifts back to the staff because it's really up to the staff to develop the record and conduct the initial analysis that will be provided ultimately to the front office and the commissioners for purposes of making a decision.
So aside from just being aware that there may be potential issues in a merger, how aware or how informed are both the bureau director and the commissioners of the particular facts in an investigation before receiving a formal complaint, or a formal recommendation?
The bureau director is typically very well informed. They have regular meetings with the staff of each division in order to go over their docket, so to speak, to see what's on their plate and talk about those matters that are becoming ripe for a decision, and also just to make sure that they stay abreast of what's on deck, to be sure that things are sort of progressing in line with expectations. It also allows the director to keep the commissioners apprised, because one of the really goals of the director is to avoid any surprises at the commission level. I mean, you do not want to sort of have a matter surface unexpectedly and sort of have people in crisis mode. So you want the commissioners to know that it's coming, to start to become educated about the matter, get a sense of it, and so if and when it gets to the point where they need to make a decision, they're not starting from ground zero.
Okay. But so if the commissioners are at least somewhat informed about a merger before they do receive a formal recommendation, do they give any sort of feedback? Is that something that the bureau director takes into, or the front office in general takes into consideration when deciding whether to forward a recommendation?
They often do. Not always, but in a lot of cases they do, especially in cases that are high profile and raise difficult issues. In fact, I think that the Bureau Director would want that feedback. The feedback's critical to making sure that whatever recommendation goes up is one that addresses all of the questions and concerns that the commissioners may have. So part of the advisory process that takes place is part of the purpose of that is to elicit from the commissioners any concerns or questions they have, so that the Bureau and the front office in particular can make sure those are adequately investigated and addressed. Because you don't want a situation where a recommendation goes up and there's a hole in the analysis, or there's an issue that a particular commissioner thought was important that's not adequately addressed from their perspective. That puts the commissioner in a very bad position, and it also creates a lot of stress at the Bureau level. So there's a lot of interaction with the commissioners, and I kind of think of the Bureau Director as sort of the critical piece to that interaction, making sure that the staff and the Competition Bureau are in sync with what the commissioners are interested in, so that they can make an informed and well-reasoned decision.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. We've only been speaking about the Bureau of Competition, and but my understanding is the Bureau of Economics also must forward a recommendation to the commissioners. So maybe if you could talk a little bit more about the role of the Bureau of Economics and of their Bureau Director as well.
Sure. So the Bureau of Economics is, but as the name indicates, a separate bureau. They send up a separate recommendation, and that's an important part of the overall package that goes to the Commission for purposes of making a decision. The Bureau of Economics works very closely with the Competition Bureau from the beginning. How much effort and the degree of resources that are invested depends on the type of case it is. So there are some cases that require a lot of input from the Economics Bureau because they involve data. Retail mergers tend to involve a lot of input from the Bureau of Economics, and there's a lot of interaction with outside economists going through the data. Cases like one of the famous examples is Office Depot Staples, and I'm sure that the Bureau of Economics was very important and spent a lot of time on the Office Depot, Office Max matter. So how involved they get is a function of the types of issues that are raised, but they are involved in every matter, and they do submit or send up a recommendation on every matter.
And how important is what the Bureau of Economics staff is thinking to what Feinstein or what the front office of the Bureau of Competition, how important is that to their own recommendation, knowing that BE will also be forwarding its own recommendation?
So my sense, based on my experience, is that that's varied over time and depends to some extent on how highly valued the economic analysis is by the decision makers. So if you think of, just to take the current commission, if you think of somebody like Josh Wright, Commissioner Wright, he, I think, would put a lot of weight on the recommendation of the Bureau of Economics. There may be other commissioners who tend to have more of a litigation background, and they may put more weight on the evidentiary record and view the economics analysis as another sort of piece of evidence to be considered. I mean, ideally, if you're the director of the Bureau of Competition and you're forwarding a recommendation, ideally you want all the arrows pointing in the right direction. If you're going to close a case or agree to a consent or bring a complaint, you really want everybody to be on the same page if you can get there. And so that's ideal. It doesn't always happen, but it often happens. More cases than not are unanimous decisions and unanimous recommendations.
Sure.
And so in order to do that, there has to be a lot of coordination, a lot of interaction between the bureaus, and with the commission.
And is that, how much of that coordination is at the staff level or as opposed to at the front office level and then ultimately with the commissioners?
I think most of it in the early stages is at the staff level. As a matter progresses, as the investigation progresses and as the clock, so to speak, begins to wind down as you get closer to the end of the second request process and you get to the point where decisions have to be made one way or the other, just because of the way the HSR process works, the intensity and frequency of the coordination and interaction increases. Because it's really important by the time that a recommendation gets to the commission that people feel comfortable that a thorough job's been done. And if there are disagreements between the Competition Bureau and the Bureau of Economics, for example, it's important and it's good government to try to sort of sort out why those disagreements exist, see if it's because of a difference in a view on the facts or some other reason, and be able to articulate to the commission the basis for that difference of opinion.
Okay. I can certainly think of at least several examples when there have been split recommendations and the commission has still decided to bring a complaint. I'm just wondering, is there anything unique, a unique set of facts to a case like that would make the Bureau, say for example, the Bureau of Competition Bureau Director comfortable in forwarding a recommendation knowing that there will not be the same recommendation coming from the Bureau of Economics?
I think it varies depending on the matter. You know, the Bureau of Economics is, you know, they play a very important role, but you know, the Competition Bureau is looking at more than just the economic analysis. They're looking at the contemporaneous business documents, they're taking depositions, they're talking to customers, and BE, Bureau of Economics, you know, participates in that process, but they don't necessarily attach the same weight to some of the evidence that the Competition Bureau and the litigators do. And so you can have, you know, legitimate differences of opinion on, you know, looking at the same set of facts, and that does happen on occasion.
That makes sense. Have you noticed any trends with this particular, the current set of commissioners and the current set of bureau directors that either lends itself to more coordination prior to submitting a recommendation than in past administrations?
Well, so I think one factor that I think is important and can't be ignored is that Debbie Feinstein, the director of the Competition Bureau, is very much a hands-on manager, hands-on coach, hands-on leader of the Competition Bureau, and that I also think she has a very good relationship with the chairman, Chairman Ramirez. I think that they respect each other a lot, and that Chairman Ramirez has a lot of confidence in Debbie Feinstein's judgment. And so that type of working relationship is good because it means that they are going to be comfortable having candid conversations and communicating with each other in a way that hopefully produces good, you know, good outcomes, good decisions. I think, you know, as far as the relationship with the Bureau of Economics, the director hasn't been there as long as Debbie, so I don't have as good a sense of that relationship. But my sense is that overall the commission is functioning pretty well. I mean, they, as I said, they don't agree on everything, but on most matters they agree, and I think that the team that's in place now is an excellent team.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it seems like they have been able to present a fairly unified voice in a number of things. Unfortunately, I think our time is about up, but I want to thank you again for joining us today, and I
Thank
hope
you.
we'll be able to continue the conversation in the future.
Thank you.